He froze in the middle of the ballroom, not because of the applause, not because of the flashing cameras, but because of a small silver ring on the finger of the maid standing near the wall, a ring so old and scratched that no one else noticed it, but he did, because once, long ago, when he was a poor orphan with empty pockets and a broken heart, he had sworn that same ring would one day be theirs forever. He did not speak, he did not move, his face stayed calm, but inside him something collapsed, because the world had just reminded him of who he really was before money taught him how to hide. Years earlier, he was a quiet boy living behind a burned factory, sleeping on cardboard, surviving on leftovers, never crying in front of others, because crying never filled an empty stomach. People ignored him, pushed past him, spoke over him, and treated him like air, but he learned patience early, learned to swallow humiliation silently, learned that hope could survive even when dignity could not. She was the only one who ever sat beside him, a girl with dirt on her hands and kindness in her eyes, working at the same shelter, cleaning floors for food, smiling even when her own life hurt. They shared bread, shared silence, shared dreams whispered so quietly that the world could not steal them. One cold night, with snow cutting through their clothes, he found that ring in a junk box, bent and dull, and slipped it onto her finger with shaking hands, promising her he would marry her when he became someone, when he could give her more than hunger and fear. She laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it was beautiful, and she believed him, not in his future wealth, but in his heart. Then life separated them, cruelly and suddenly, when he was taken away by a charity program, adopted, educated, reshaped into someone new, while she stayed behind, forgotten by systems that only saved the lucky. He never found her again, or maybe he never tried hard enough, because success arrived fast, and with it came new names, new suits, new people who praised him loudly but never knew him deeply. Now he stood there as a billionaire, powerful and untouchable, while she stood there as a maid, head lowered, hands folded, invisible to everyone except him, wearing the promise he once made as a boy who had nothing but hope. The music played on, the guests laughed, glasses clinked, and no one noticed the silence growing inside him, because powerful men are expected to be composed, not emotional, and he had trained himself well, trained himself to survive boardrooms, betrayals, and wars disguised as business deals. He watched her quietly, afraid that if he spoke, his voice would betray him, afraid that if he moved, the past would crash into the present too loudly. She did not recognize him, not at first, because money changes faces, confidence changes posture, and the boy she knew never wore tailored suits or carried authority in his eyes. To her, he was just another rich man standing among rich people, another reminder of a world that never belonged to her. Her life had been a long lesson in patience, waking before dawn, scrubbing floors that were never clean enough, accepting insults dressed as instructions, enduring humiliation silently because protest only brought punishment. She had kept the ring not because she was naive, but because it reminded her that once, someone had seen her as worthy of love, not labor. The powerful man hosting the event, arrogant and influential, noticed the billionaire's distraction and smirked, because he enjoyed control, enjoyed reminding others who ruled the room. He snapped his fingers at the maid sharply, correcting her posture, humiliating her publicly, laughing while others followed out of fear, not courage. The billionaire watched this injustice unfold, his jaw tightening, memories flooding back of being spoken to the same way, treated the same way, reduced to nothing in front of people who felt important. He said nothing yet, because patience had also become his weapon, because justice, he had learned, was more powerful when it arrived unexpectedly. The maid apologized quietly, her voice steady despite the shame burning inside her, and as she bowed her head, the ring caught the chandelier's light again, sealing the moment. That was when he knew, without doubt, that fate had brought them together again, not for romance alone, but for something deeper, something earned through suffering and time. Later that night, when the hall emptied and the arrogance faded with the guests, he asked for her name through his assistant, his voice calm, professional, detached, even though his heart raced like it did when he was a boy begging for work. When she stood before him alone, she kept her eyes down, expecting criticism, expecting dismissal, because kindness was rare in her world and usually came with conditions. He spoke softly, asking where she got the ring, and she answered honestly, telling him about a boy who promised her a future and disappeared, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with acceptance, because life had taught her not to expect returns. He listened in silence, tears threatening but controlled, because strong men, he knew, did not cry loudly, they carried their pain quietly and used it wisely. He revealed nothing yet, only thanked her and offered her help without explanation, which she hesitated to accept, because hope had betrayed her before. Days passed, then weeks, and slowly, patiently, he changed her world without overwhelming it, arranging education, protection, dignity, never crossing boundaries, never forcing gratitude. The arrogant host who once humiliated her suddenly lost contracts, influence, power, not through revenge, but through exposure, because truth, when revealed calmly, destroys arrogance more completely than anger ever could. When she finally looked up at him one evening, truly looked, recognition dawned slowly, painfully, beautifully, as memories aligned with reality, and her breath caught not because he was rich, but because he was familiar. He confessed everything then, not as a billionaire, but as the orphan he once was, apologizing not for leaving, but for forgetting to search, for allowing comfort to dull his promises. She listened quietly, stronger now than before, not desperate, not weak, because patience had shaped her too. She reminded him that promises made in poverty are easy to romanticize but hard to honor, and that justice mattered more than fairy tales. He did not interrupt, did not defend himself, because real power listens. In the end, she chose freely, not because he was rich, but because he returned as the man he promised to become, one who remembered where he came from. Their reunion was not loud, not public, not dramatic, but deeply just, because the world that once humiliated them now watched silently as dignity reclaimed its place. The ring, once dull, shone again, not because it changed, but because the people wearing it had endured, waited, and finally received justice in its quietest, most powerful form.